The conference room was smaller than I expected. Plain walls, one long table, a row of quiet leather chairs that looked like they had heard more family secrets than celebrations. I arrived early and sat near the end of the table, not out of strategy, just habit. Growing up, you learn where you're supposed to sit in a room. I hadn't seen my parents in 6 years. When the door opened and they walked in together, they didn't hesitate. No awkward pause. No uncertainty about whether they were welcome. My mother smiled the way people do when they want witnesses to see it. "Well," she said, placing her purse on the table, "this is surreal." My father gave a small nod in my direction, like we'd last spoken last week instead of when I was 17. "Good to see you," he said. I nodded back. No hug was attempted. They took the seats closest to the head of the table. That detail didn't feel accidental. The executor arrived a few minutes later, a calm man with thin glasses and a folder thick enough to make the table feel suddenly official. He introduced himself, confirmed identities, and explained the process in the neutral tone of someone who spends a lot of time watching families change shape in quiet rooms like this. While he organized papers, my parents began filling the silence. My mother leaned slightly toward him. "My father was always very generous," she said. "But finances can be complicated. We just want to make sure everything is handled responsibly." My father nodded. "We'll help manage things," he added. "It's a lot for someone young." I didn't respond. Not because I was shocked. Because the script was familiar. When they cut me off at 17, the explanation had sounded similar. "You need to learn independence. You'll thank us someday." What it meant in practice was leaving with a duffel bag, an address for a distant relative who didn't answer the door. My grandfather had called 3 weeks later. He didn't ask many questions. He just said, "Come by Sunday. We'll figure it out." And we did, not in some dramatic life-changing way. Just quietly. Over years, he helped with rent once, then never again. Instead, he helped me find work, learn contracts, understand how money actually moved. Most of our conversations were about practical things, but every now and then he'd say something that felt like it had been waiting for the right moment. "People don't always change," he told me once, "but circumstances do." Across the table, my parents were still talking. "Obviously, we'd want oversight," my mother was saying. "Large estates require coordination." The executor listened politely. He didn't interrupt. Eventually he folded his hands. "Let's proceed," he said. He began with routine matters, properties, accounts, personal items. My grandfather's estate was substantial, but not complicated. The house, the land around it, several investment accounts. And then the number that seemed to hang in the air once it was spoken. $3 million. My parents remained composed. Almost relaxed. My father even leaned back slightly. "Well," he said, "that will require careful management." The executor gave a small nod. "Yes," he said. "Which brings us to the final instruction your father prepared personally." He reached for a separate folder. It was thicker than the others. I noticed something shift in his posture as he opened it. Not dramatic, just deliberate. He read silently for a moment. Then he looked up. "Your father anticipated that his estate might attract competing opinions regarding oversight." My mother smiled lightly. "That's understandable," the executor continued. "He established a legal structure, placing the estate and all associated funds entirely under the authority of his grandson." The room went very still. My father leaned forward slightly. "I'm sorry, under his authority, how exactly?" The executor adjusted his glasses. "Full control of all assets, effective immediately." My mother's smile faded a fraction. "Well, of course," she said quickly. "But as parents we would." The executor raised a hand gently. "There is an additional clause." He turned the page. "Your father included a specific provision restricting parental involvement in any financial, administrative, or advisory capacity related to the estate." Silence spread across the table. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind that arrives when something becomes legally undeniable. My father blinked. That can't be serious. The executor slid the document across the table. It is very clear. My mother picked it up. Her expression didn't collapse or explode, it just drained. He did this deliberately, she said quietly. Yes, the executor replied. No one looked at me for a moment, then my father finally did, not angry. Just confused in a way that felt unfamiliar. You knew about this. I shook my head. No, that part was true, my grandfather had never mentioned it. But sitting there I realized something. He hadn't needed to. The executor closed the folder. Your grandfather was very thorough, he said calmly. He wanted to ensure that his wishes could not be misinterpreted. My mother set the papers down slowly. For the first time since entering the room, neither of my parents had anything ready to say. The meeting ended shortly after that. No argument, no dramatic confrontation. Just signatures, instructions, and quiet chairs sliding against the floor. Outside the building, the afternoon air felt strangely normal. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing without any awareness that something had shifted inside that room. My parents exited a few minutes later. We stood near the sidewalk in a loose triangle. My father cleared his throat. Well, he said. This is unexpected. I nodded. No one apologized. No one tried to explain the past. After a moment, my mother said softly, your grandfather always was stubborn. I almost smiled. Then they left. I watched their car disappear down the street. For years I had imagined what it would feel like if control ever shifted. I thought it might feel like victory. Instead it felt quieter than that. More like something my grandfather had quietly finished for me long before this meeting ever happened. And now it was simply my turn to decide what to do with it.